everyone, Tera Roberts here with your DFS Bargains for Week 14. These are your cheap value plays of the week, those guys that can help give you some upside while opening up salary for the expensive plays. Before we get started, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Fantasy Alarm. Now, at quarterback this week, I'm going with Taysom Hill. We can criticize Taysom all we want, but don't get distracted by the fact that the Cowboys are superior when it comes to interceptions. They lead the league tied with the Patriots with the most interceptions with 19. You were almost statistically guaranteed to throw at least one interception against them. So while Taysom's interceptions were troubling, the Cowboys have done this all season long. Both Tom Brady and Justin Herbert threw for multiple interceptions against them. And this week the Saints play the Jets, who coincidentally are on the exact opposite end of the spectrum with only 4 interceptions, dead last on the year. That said, even if Taysom did throw another 4 interceptions, it doesn't really matter when you run for the volume that he does. Hill completed 19 of 41 passes, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but a whopping 101 yards on the ground. Statistically, he is a QB1 and dirt cheap in DFS. Moving on to running backs, I strongly dislike this slate for cheap running backs, but I managed to find you 2 options. The first is injury contingent. If Elijah Mitchell doesn't play, you gotta go with JaMycal Hasty. The 49ers just prefer to run the ball, and they do it very well. Elijah Mitchell has been a monster with a total of 76 carries over his last 3 games. The running back room for San Francisco as a whole is just very unhealthy right now, so if Mitchell can't go, Hasty is in line for a significant volume. He hasn't really had a shot to showcase his capabilities this year, but we do know that he has pass catching upside and a decent matchup against Cincinnati. The second running back for this week is, it's a gut feeling. I still think that Chuba Hubbard will lead the way on the ground for Carolina, but it's very possible that Amir Abdullah will receive the bulk of pass catching work out of the backfield. In 4 of the past 5 games, Abdullah has had a minimum of 4 targets, and 1 game with no targets, which was coincidentally, of course, when McCaffrey was at full capacity. The matchup against Atlanta is good, so I do think that Abdullah could be in line for a productive day. Moving on to wide receivers. At wide receivers this week, I'm going deep. I'm going so low priced with the value for these 2 guys that they are so cheap you might be spending more on your defense than you are on them. The first guy, I don't know why. I don't think we'll ever know why Urban Meyer does such Urban Meyer things, but the guy leading the way for the Jags receiving core is Laquon Treadwell. For 2 weeks in a row now after the loss of Jamal Agnew, Treadwell has had 4 interceptions for over 50 yards in each game. The Jags play Tennessee, and quite frankly, there's about 5 different directions that this game could go, but with his snap count and target share combined with ridiculously low pricing, he's a budget-friendly guy with a solid floor and upside playing against an inconsistent Tennessee defense. Another guy who is a true deep play bargain, you cannot get much cheaper than this at wide receiver. Lil'Jordan Humphrey could be a big play threat for New Orleans this week. Deontay Harris has served as that boom receiver, paying off in favorable matchups. Last week against Dallas, he caught 4 of 8 targets for 96 yards and 1 touchdown. Harris is suspended now, so Humphrey could be in line to see an uptick in targets and snap count. But Humphrey also did get in on the action last week with 2 catches, 49 yards, 1 touchdown. The Saints are in another favorable matchup. Taysom Hill's running ability plus the return of Alvin Kamara could really just open things up in the passing game against a very sad Jets defense. A couple of big plays for Humphrey would pay off huge at his pricing. And at tight end, my tight end that I am all in on this week is unfortunately playing on Monday night, and this is a main slate only video, so we got to pivot, but it's an easy pivot. Austin Hooper is the last man standing in a frustrating 3-man tight end group for Cleveland. David Njoku is on COVID IR, Harrison Bryant is battling an ankle injury, and the Browns face a Baltimore team that is bottom 10 in points given up to tight ends. Combine all of that with Hooper being very cheap, and you get a budget-friendly guy who is now the only tight end in an offense that likes to lean on that position. And that wraps things up for this week's DFS Bargains. As always, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Fantasy Alarm, and come back next week for another round of DFS Bargains.